Hey guys, it's Ada from Lucipixel, and welcome to the Painter's Hello. For the last month or so, I have been conducting a bit of an experiment with my art. Not a stylistic experiment, but a social one. Being somebody who runs a YouTube channel and is well aware of the importance of social media for building a brand and getting people to know your business and all that kind of cool stuff, I am also aware that if you give in to those demons a little bit too much, it can start hijacking your creative process. And that can, depending on where you are on your artistic journey, do you more harm than good and waste time when it comes to your artistic growth, your artistic evolution, finding your voice, all those things that a lot of us artists aspire to achieve. So what did I do? I decided for one full month just to draw for myself and resist the temptation to share what I've done with my public, with Instagram, on YouTube, or even in any of my Painter's Hollow videos. This is the first time you've probably seen me showcase a new work of art since my last Painter's Hollow. And that's not by accident. That was done on purpose. Why did I do that? Well, in order to give you an idea of why I feel this was important for me and why this may be important for you depending on where you are in your own artistic journey, you need to understand where I came from and where you might come from in comparison to that. Being 50, I became an artist and even became a professional artist before social media was even a thing. So my art reality, my art community reality was I drew, I built a portfolio, if I was in school, hung out with my artistic peers. Maybe I'd go to a cafe and hang out with somebody and draw, and I would learn from art books and stuff like that. And that was my reality. My reality was a very close-knit community. It was me, my peers in school, my close friends, artists, my learning material, and that's about it. All of a sudden, things changed, and the internet was born. And within a decade of that, we had things like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And all of a sudden, the landscape of what we produced, how we produced, and more importantly, how we shared our work wasn't just a local thing, it was an international thing. Our audience went from a couple of people, maybe a couple of dozen people in our class, to hundreds or thousands or even millions of people, depending on our social media presence and depending on how much energy we put into that. Note that during that time that I started to make a social media presence, I was already professional. I had already developed my artistic muscles. I already had a voice, at least the voice I had back then artistically, without any distractions. By the time I started sharing my work, I was already sharing professional work. And that was the same reality for artists around the same age as I, who had made a name for themselves, had built their career skills in their chosen artistic field. And by the time they were presenting their artwork online on social media, they were already trained, seasoned artists. Fast forward to 2026, most of the artists that are posting their art nowadays are usually young kids, but usually it's teenagers, young adults in their 20s, etc. And the difference in the reality between my world and their world is the fact that they've never known a world without social media. They've never known a world where sharing was a private thing. It wasn't a public, or even more importantly, an international thing. As such, influence came into the picture much earlier than it did for me. Now, is that a bad thing? Am I saying social media has damaged the brains of the youth and youth are all screwed? Actually, no. I don't adhere to that belief. Why? Well, because I have kids ranging from teenagers to young adults. And I've taught artists ranging from teenagers all the way up until their 70s and 80s. And I can say with full confidence that there isn't a single artist that I've worked with at any age that wasn't active, resilient, brilliant, and, in my humble opinion, healthy. Healthy mentally, usually healthy physically as well. I don't give in to the hype that the youth are screwed. In fact, I'm more likely to give in to the hype that it's the parents of youth that might need to do a little bit more work. Don't forget, the youth that live today are a product of their parents, who were a product of a pre-internet era. So when I start to hear rumors about how youth are screwed and they're unhealthy and they're depressed and they're damaged goods compared to the free-roaming life I used to live, I don't see that. That's not my experience from working with thousands and thousands of people and being somebody who's raised kids in this environment and see all of their friends. They have great friends, they have great minds, and I personally feel incredibly optimistic about that. But what I do see, especially from an artistic perspective, is the compulsion to share everything all the time, to update everybody with your work all the time, can make you far more susceptible to that Mark Zuckerberg algorithm out there. That algorithm saying if you don't post regularly, you're going to start to lose the attention and the engagement of your audience. And although some of that might be true, if you give in to that temptation too much, where in all of that can you find the time to just draw, to just be yourself, to just meditate into the process, explore without pressure, and allow yourself to make all those happy little accidents that lead to your greatest work, that lead to you finding your artistic voice? One of my favorite artists online, Jeremy Vickery, who runs the YouTube channel Lighting Mentor, posted an amazing video where he's talking about, quote, the dark side of beautiful art, where he was basically showcasing that all of these beautiful works of art that you see by these top pros very often start off as very messy garbage, as a lot of my art does too. Art is a sloppy, very unpredictable process. And unless you learn to embrace those imperfections and feel comfortable with those imperfections as an artist and as an individual, then you're kind of bypassing the very thing that can lead to self-discovery. Another example that I really love is Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about the days of library cards. If you wanted to find something, if you wanted to index a library book, you'd have to go to the library, open up one of those library shelf things with the thousands of little cards in it, and you'd have to flip through them alphabetically and look for that title or that artist or that whatever subject you're looking for. And you'd grab the card you need, and then you'd walk through the library, carefully looking through all the shelves until you found the book you were looking for. In that process of fiddling through all of these cards, in the process of looking through these shelves and going down the wrong aisle and backtracking and looking up on the top and the bottom shelf, you weren't just looking for your own book, you're also making discoveries, weren't you? A lot of learning happened, and I remember this experience. A lot of that learning happened through the accidental discoveries of books you didn't even know existed. Because that book existed in a repertoire on a shelf with other similar books, that's where I made most of my discoveries about different artists and different principles and different processes. It introduced me to things through the process of taking the wrong path. Social media, internet searches, Google, and now AI, of course, there can be a side effect, and that side effect, I feel, is the lack of discovery. It's limiting accidental discovery, where very often those happy accidents happen in our learning that lead to us following our instincts, that lead to us trying something we wouldn't have tried before. It's eliminating novelty in the guise of novelty. It's saying you have access to everything, but it's beelining you directly to a result without allowing you to travel off the beaten path and make that discovery. Furthermore, it can make you more subject to unhealthy comparison. It might make you feel like, well, crap, my art is nowhere near as good as this artist's artwork, and that's why I'm not getting attention. And you know what? That's very likely true. Maybe your art isn't as good as that amazing artist. But the thing that you're taking for granted is the fact that that artist has been doing this for 20, 30 years. You may have only been doing this for a few. So it's not a healthy comparison. I would argue that that's one of the main differences between being in a traditional school, where you're surrounded by a lot of artists at the same level, studying at the same year, studying the same subject as you are, versus going on Instagram, going on Pinterest, going on ArtStation, and just seeing walls and walls and walls of geniuses in every imaginable different walk of illustration, concept art, and design. It's not a fair comparison. And you're forcing yourself to be exposed to so much of it that can really destroy your confidence. And much like your personal appearance, if you expose yourself to too much of this perfection, this flawlessness in other artists' work, and furthermore, that algorithm is not showing you any favor by obliterating your engagement, you get a couple of likes on something that you might have spent weeks on, that can be very deflating, can't it? So how do you remedy that? Well, exactly the way I did over the last month. If you feel like you're a little bit down, you're a little bit demotivated, you're a little bit overwhelmed, and you've gotten yourself a little bit too caught up in the social media hype train, my recommendation is give yourself a little detox. Take a month off. Screw it, take a couple of months off. Who cares? And just draw for yourself. If you make accidents, who gives a shit? Start over and try again. Nobody's watching. And you can make as many of these happy accidents as you want until eventually you produce something that you're happy with. And when you're happy with it, don't rush to social media right away to share it. No. Put it aside, save it, and move on to the next one. And try doing this 3, 4, 5 times until you really start to find some momentum. And when you find that momentum, you're going to start to find confidence. It's like watching a sports game, if I can use a 20th analogy in one video here. When you're watching a sports game, be it the World Cup, be it hockey playoffs that finished recently, you'll see a team that's a little bit in the slump. They're just not getting that first goal. They're not getting that momentum. They're not getting that inertia. And the first period passes and the second period passes, and they're just frustrated with themselves, and they're slamming their hockey sticks on the ground and pissed off until one of them makes a lucky break and scores a goal. And the minute they score that goal, you can see the eyes in every one of those members of that team light up. A fire is lit in their eyes, and it's usually around that point when they score their second and third and fourth, and maybe even potentially win the game. They just needed that little victory, didn't they? And as soon as they get that victory, then they get that dopamine hit. They feel that promise, that hope, and off they go. The same thing applies to your art. If you try to score one, quote, goal with your artwork and it fails, you miss the mark, you miss the net, hypothetically speaking, a lot of artists will just hang up their pencils and leave the game. No, that's not the way it works. You got to get back up again, try again, get back up again, try again, get back up again, try again. But if you're doing that with an audience, you have my word, it's going to be a very crippling experience because you feel judged, because you feel incompetent, because you feel embarrassed when you shouldn't feel embarrassed. Art is a difficult process. Here's another fun fact that'll help reinforce this point. One of my personal favorite artists, a personal favorite artist of many great artists out there, is John Singer Sargent. We look at John Singer Sargent's work and we revel at the minimalism of it, how he could capture such gesture and feeling and accuracy in his brushstrokes, his poses, and all of that with minimal brushstrokes. I often make the comparison with my students between John Singer Sargent, who's very minimalistic, and an artist like William Bouguereau, who is incredibly hyper-detailed. You look at them at a viewing distance, you'd barely be able to tell them apart. It's not unless you stick your nose against the canvas that you can see the difference. And people think to themselves, how is he capable of achieving this so easily? Well, that's the illusion. John Singer Sargent did not achieve that easily. In fact, that simple, minimalistic brushstroke painting that he painted, he may have repainted and retried 15, 16, 17 times. You're not seeing that, are you? Because when John Singer Sargent was having his many, many failures, he was doing so in private. He wasn't showcasing every single one of his failed attempts. He wasn't airing his dirty laundry for everybody to see. He was doing so in private. The only person that would know about it would be him and his model. And you deserve that same privacy too. You deserve to think the things you're thinking and feel the things you're feeling without being judged or watched. People need to wear their old sloppy clothes and not fix their hair and their makeup every day and just be themselves as people and as artists. It's good for your health. It's good for your growth. If you find yourself being weighed down by the pressures of judgment on social media, there is no crime in just taking a break and finding your momentum and then coming back when you feel healthy and safe doing so. Even if you're a 50-year-old artist who runs a school and a YouTube channel, nobody gives a shit. Nobody cared that I didn't post anything. Nobody cared that they hadn't seen any of my new artwork. In fact, maybe it created a little bit of anticipation. What's this artist doing next? Do we get angry at Peter Jackson because we don't know what his next project is? Do we get angry at From Software when we don't know what their next game is? No, it just builds anticipation. Miyazaki deserves to create in private. He was even asked the question at one point, do you have a little black book full of Dark Souls secrets and lore that you don't share with anybody? Because everybody loves Dark Souls lore because it's so discreet, it's so mysterious. And Miyazaki said, yeah, I do. But it's not some fancy-looking gothic leather-bound book. It's a bunch of scraps of loose-leaf paper sitting all over the place somewhere. It's a messy process. Miyazaki thinks in private. The reason why he's so private about his work is because it's in that privacy that he has the freedom to fully think and be himself and take his time without judgment. And you deserve that as well. If you need that time for yourself, take it. And you have my word. Nobody's going to judge you for it. You deserve to think at your own pace. You deserve to create at your own pace. You have my word. Instagram will still be there when you come back. And with that said, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.